Today we are very lucky to feature Jaime Hernandez. In 1981, he and his brothers Gilbert and Mario began the independent comic series Love and Rockets. Jaime and Gilbert have been drawing these comics, on and off, for almost 40 years. Gilbert is best known for his heartbreak soup stories set in the town of Palomar, but Jaime is known for Locas, the story of Maggie and Hopey and those who cross paths with them across the span of decades. Locas started as a science fiction comedy that involved an ongoing relationship drama and character study of detours into punk and wrestling. It's both a comics institution and a vessel for whatever story Jaime wants to draw. The past 4 years of these comics have been collected in today's book, Is This How You See Me? He is joined today by Sarah Boxer, cultural critic and creator of the cartoon novel In the Floyd Archives, a psycho bestiary. Her new book, Mother May I, is coming out this June. Without further ado, Jaime Hernandez and Sarah Boxer.
It's your choice. Can everybody hear us? Okay, great. So it's a real honor to be here with Jaime, and I wanted to tell you that maybe give a little bit of a confession that when I first dove into the Love and Rockets series, I was like, how do I get into this soap opera? You know, it's so complicated, and so I felt like an outsider. And I'm feeling much the same way here because it's really a question of where do we start? I mean, there is so much. There are wrestlers, are there rockets? This is my first question to you. Love and Rockets, where did that title come from? Maybe I entered the series way too late to figure it out.
Gilbert, my brother, came up with the title.
Use the mic, please.
Oh, my brother, is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. He came up with the title. He just
Great
put
title.
two words together. He wanted technical and emotional side by side. And he had other titles going on, and he came up with these mock covers and asked, which one should we use? Went straight to Love and Rockets.
Uh-huh. Are there in fact rockets anywhere?
In the beginning, there was.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, now I would like to. Oops, the thing went off. How do I get it back on? Did I turn it off?
It's still showing.
No, wait. That's not the frame. Okay. So I wanted to ask about the doubling of names. So is that how you spell your name? Is that how you spell your name?
The big one?
Yeah.
That's how I sign my name.
Oh, why an X, or is that a J?
In Spanish, or
okay.
I don't know if all Spanish, but Mexican Spanish, you can substitute a J with an X.
Okay.
And it looks better. I've always hated the J.
And you have, you have doubling of all the names. You have Maggie and Perla, and you have Esperanza, Hopey, Huerta, Hoppers. Is that the bilingual aspect, or is it just you like doubling everything?
No, it's just nicknames. People give nicknames to things, and Hopey's got 12 names for Maggie.
Right.
The maggot, the
Right.
the magpie.
You're right.
So I just think about me and my friends hanging out and how we used to talk to each other and name people on the block.
What were you called as a kid?
Bad words.
Bad words. Okay.
Now,
well, there are no kids in here, right? Because we're going to be getting into some racy material later. So anyway, so this gives you I asked for just to straighten out in my head a family tree. Did you create this, or did they create this?
No, they did. I wasn't going to touch that.
Yeah. but it gives you a sense of how many interconnections there are. So the blue lines, and there are very few of them, are intergenerational connections, so parents and children. And the ones that you see coming out of Maggie's head, she's on the left for you ones who are newbies here. They're mostly friendships and lovers, right? I think that's what the chart says, anyhow. There are so many complicated connections between these people, love affairs and traumatic events and their childhood selves, and they're relating to their adult selves. That it's very daunting.
You're scaring them away.
I'm not. No. I'm trying to say that when you overcome it, so it's like incredible. But anyway, how many of you are already fans of Jaime and Love and Rockets? Okay, so I actually don't. Do I? How many of you need background? Okay, so. Over the years, the Hernandez brothers have been celebrated and interviewed many times, and fans know all about your Latino heritage and how it plays into your comics. Anyway, the Hernandez boys, there are four boys or five boys and one girl, right? Yeah. And they grew up in Oxnard, California, which, as I understand it, has elements of Mexican culture and elements of California culture, Southern California culture.
Yeah,
Is that right?
It's a agricultural town. Mm-hmm. That's where the Mexican came for work. Mm-hmm. But the beach has like celebrity houses, summer houses, and stuff like that. So I grew up in this crazy little, like, we're poor over here, and then there's rich people living
all around. Interesting.
Famous people.
So I was wondering, how different is the town you grew up in from Hoppers?
Oh, it's really closely based.
Very close.
Because it's what I know. Yeah.
And for those who don't know Hoppers, can you describe it a little bit and say, other than, the rich surrounding the the poor, but sort of what does it look like? What's
just I don't know, suburban Southern California, if you know it. Outside LA. Just working class, I grew up in a mostly Mexican neighborhood. We had black people, we had Japanese, it was all mixed, but it was mostly Mexican. And of course, my town had its gangs and sections.
Were you in a gang? Or?
No, I thought I was.
You thought you were in a gang? How can you just think you're in a gang?
Well, you run away when the violence starts. But I grew up before Love and Rockets. In my teenage years, I grew up, cruising on Sunday night, low riding, and all that.
Cruising meaning driving a car.
Cruise night, low riders right? And hopping and
okay.
Which just comes to the name Hoppers.
Oh, okay.
Hoppers is not the town; it's actually the area, the barrio that Maggie lives in.
I see.
And it's named Hoppers because of hopping cars. Because it's the kind of the way Mexicans name things, I live in Hoppers. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That's what you do? That's how you explain it? How many people understand that?
You do a lowrider hydraulics.
Everybody but me.
And you go, you go.
Oh, I see. Okay. I got it now. Yeah. It just needed a few more nudges there. So anyway, let's move on past this incredibly confusing chart. Whoopsie, wrong way. So this is, I think, a frame from the new book, and it shows Hopey and Maggie young on the left, and Hopey and Maggie in present day, I guess, day, on the right. And anyway, I was going to ask, what is it? How did you and your brother Gilbert end up separating into these two actually pretty different worlds, right? You started drawing them. I mean, his brother Gilbert did this fictional Latin American town called Palomar, right?
Yeah.
And it was run by this super busty woman named Luba, right? And whereas Jaime's world was more, I would say, down to earth. Is that correct?
Oh, well, I was doing above the border, and he was doing below the border.
Did you decide to divide it up like that, or how did that work?
No, Gilbert saw that my Maggie Hopey characters, the little punk rockers, they got noticed right away, and he didn't want to copy that. He wanted to do something else from a different perspective, and so he came up with Heartbreak Soup. Yeah.
One thing, though, that these two brothers do have in common is that as different as their worlds are, they are totally women-centered worlds. I don't know. Do you think that's fair to say?
I would say so.
Yeah. Which is a rarity in the comics world and just totally extraordinary. I mean, I've read hundreds of comics, and it is not usual. I was wondering if you could tell us how and why you and your brother both ended up doing this, and why
women?
Why women?
Yeah.
Exactly. Why should there be women?
That's the hardest one to answer all the time because I just do. I just I like writing women. I like drawing women. Obviously.
What do you like about drawing women? Why? How is it different from drawing men?
Truthfully, I get to draw curves. I get to, I get to draw.
Yeah, we're getting to the curves.
I get to draw all kinds of women, different sizes, shapes, and colors. And
you could do that with men.
Well, I do that with men too, but it's not as fun.
Okay.
But no, in reality, I just like writing women. And it wasn't till women approached me at comic conventions really early on, because we didn't get fan mail or anything. We'd meet a woman and they would say, "I really like how you do women. You capture women really well." And
That's
I
true.
was like,
absolutely.
I was like, "Oh, cool." It was more like, all right, I get to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's just something I was liked. It's just what I like to do. That's all I can.
Okay. So this is Maggie on the right.
Yes.
And Hopey on the left. And one of the extraordinary things about Jaime's biography is that he married his cartoon character on the left. He married Hopey. And I wanted to ask you about how that all went down.
Back in my punk days, back in the late 70s, early 80s in LA, go to LA shows and things like that. I met a young woman who was very loudmouthed and with a cigarette constantly in her hand. And she influenced a lot of Hopey. Just her attitude.
So you married her after she was Hopey?
Well, I didn't marry her. We stayed friends for years. I didn't marry her till 2000. So 20 years later. Because we just stayed friends, and then blah, blah, blah. One thing led to another. And, but she was very influenced Hopey, and she used to hate me telling people that. Because she knew my Hopey fans were pretty rabid. And she was afraid.
Rabid that they would
They
do
were just
what to her?
very intense. And she was afraid that they would take one look at her and like,
say, "You're not Hopey.
I'm Hopey."
That's funny. Okay.
But now she's okay with it.
Is she as kick-ass as Hopey?
I think so.
Good answer.
I took Hopey, a little fewer different ways, but it was basically the same thing. Yeah.
One of the other things I really like, and it's actually is one of the things I really love about the Love and Rockets work is how it goes back and forth in time, and you fill in the stories as you go, and it's always like very enriching. And you can. I mean, I was saying that it's very daunting to jump into this world, but actually, you can jump in at any point, and get where you're going. You know, you can. But it gets richer and richer. The more books you've read, the more you know. These small events take on great significance as you've read more of them. So this is Hopey Glass. This is your wife. And one of the things, so here's a flashback. In her life, she has just become a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And she's caught a kid who's trying to sneak out the fence. And before you know it, she's having a flashback to her own childhood. And the thing I was most shocked about her childhood is that she lived in the Peanuts comic strip. So you'll see what I mean. Hold on a minute. Which way is this? So you see, is she Violet, or who is she? She's one of the mean girls in Charlie Brown, right?
No, it's just Hopey. I mean, I just naturally draw that way when I draw kids.
But you do like Schultz, right? Has he been an
yeah.
influence?
Oh, big influence.
How so? I mean, it seems to be totally night and day until you see a frame like this, where there she is. There's one. It's the Peanuts world, except for the girls are totally dominant here. Well, Lucy's pretty dominant, I guess. But.
Yeah. Every time I do kids, it just seems natural to go to that style, that Dennis the Menace, Peanuts kind of little kids with big heads, because it brings out their vibrancy and their attitudes and stuff like that.
So I've talked a little bit about what it's like to jump into one of these things, and I've come to think of each book as a kind of ladder into this deep pool, and you can take any ladder you want, and you'll be and then once you're in the world, you can it's like snorkeling or something, where you're looking around and you notice things that you didn't notice before, and then you come out of the water and you take a different ladder in, and it's this is one of the things I love most about your work. But another thing, I know a lot has been made of the Latinx influence and the punk influence. Actually, you haven't talked much about the punk influence. Can you just describe what it was? Is punky about your work?
Well, when I first started the comic, and it was rockets and robots and punks and wrestlers, and it was just everything from my childhood thrown into this comic. Mm-hmm. The more I got into it, the more I realized my punk experience and my hanging out lowrider experience, that's way better than the X-Men. Mm-hmm. That's so much more interesting to me. Yeah. So I just delved into my past and I was a punk in Southern California. And it was just the funnest time. And because it came at a time I was a teenager with no future, basically, mm-hmm. Like they say about punks. Mm-hmm. And it was just a first time I was part of a revolution, mm-hmm. you say? Mm-hmm. That I was part of something.
Did you feel that at the time, or was it just kind of like...
Well, I felt alive and I wasn't bored. I mean, I grew up in the 70s with mm-hmm. Dinosaur rock, and punk basically saved me. It was kind of like, this is what I've been waiting for.
How did it save you?
I just mean, I was a bored kid in Southern California, and it turned out that most of the kids in Southern California were just bored to death in the suburbs that they lived in, the sprawling Los Angeles County, just needed something, in England it was more like a revolution
Yeah.
and political and stuff. In LA, we were just bored to death, and this would just gave us a reason to have fun.
Yeah.
And the way I mean that it kind of saved me was when it was time to do Love and Rockets, we were like, okay, we're out of high school, I don't want to do this job. I don't want to get this job. I just want to draw comics. And by then I was being influenced by all this stuff, the punk stuff and the hanging out stuff. And and punk kind of gave you that, well, I want to do this. I don't want to do what you tell me to do. And I'm going to do it myself. I don't like the comics you're drawing, so I'm going to draw the comics I want to draw, and I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come to you for permission. And so is basic that.
Yeah,
that DIY.
one of my favorite quotes from you is something like, "You tell me, no, you can't, and I'm going to do it." And that's you got to do that at some point as an artist, right?
Yeah. When I made a main character in the comic, Maggie, start to gain weight, a lot of fans didn't like that.
Yeah. So here's one of the wrestler things. Is that a wrestler?
No, that's just fantasy shit.
But you'll see those curves there. They're not maybe the kind of curves you might expect from a comic book female. This is one of my favorite frames because there are so many stereotypes broken here. Here you have an aging superhero on the right, who is flying a aspiring superhero, I think, on her back and saying, "Oh, you can't fly? No problem. Here, I'll carry you on my back." And it's just like, I've never seen anything like this in any other comics, where you have old figures, young figures, fat figures, women, and they're all women. So anyway, let's now. Okay, this is the book that's new, and I love this title. Is This How You See Me? It's a fantastic. Your titles are great. Love Bunglers. There's just really really great. So this is. Are there kids in this thing? I don't know whether kids are gonna like this, but in fact, if there are kids, they should remove themselves from the room or come close and look really carefully. Why I'm saying this. Anyway,
Nobody's undressed.
Not yet. No. Anyway, well, so here, you want to describe what's going on, where we are. This is the very beginning of the book, right?
Yes, that's basically Maggie and Ray. Her. I haven't figured out if they're married yet, but the person she lives with.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I don't know yet. So.
But Hopey's married to her wife.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's just talking about this reunion and stuff like that, and he's kind of not involved, and she's kind of nervous because she has to go to the reunion, and Hopey's wife is driving them, and Maggie's really nervous about that because of her connection with Hopey. She can't.
Oh, is that why she's nervous? So the thing that interested me about this is the poses. Like she's very comfortable. For being nervous about the trip. Yeah, you see it in her face. But with Ray, she's got this sort of physical confidence, I would say, almost just as she's at home with herself. And I was wondering, how do you get these poses? Like, do you use photographs, or do you say, hey?
I take from real life.
Can you please put one?
I take from real life.
I know, but from photographs?
This is a moment of them in their bedroom talking to each other, and there's nobody around see them.
We're here.
Well, yes, of course. The reader gets to see it, but that's the way they live. He relaxes getting head scissors. And
it's fantastic.
And they're just kind of loafing around. It's just life that you're not supposed to see, but there it is.
So, I mean, we have seen curves in comics before. R. Crumb, is famous for his big busty, big thighed, big assed women. But I wanted to talk to you about R. Crumb and how you feel that your full figured females relate to what he was doing. I mean, I don't see any relationship, but
Right.
do you?
In a way, just he kind of like he draws what he likes to draw, and without apology. I kind of do the same thing. I'm a little more aware of who's looking at it than he is. He cares less than I do about what you're saying. I grew up on his comics. I didn't agree with a lot of the racial stuff.
Right.
Most of the racial stuff, but
he was really great on women.
But yeah,
Not.
but that's where you got to decide. We have a really talented artist here. Do we get past his politics, or do we go after his politics? It's
But you don't do politics.
No, I'm talking about what he puts in his comics.
I see. I see.
That he's been getting in trouble in more than ever. Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so now Maggie wasn't always looking like this. This is her very young, and another flashback from the current. Is this the current book? Yes. And now you see what Maggie used to look like when she was a kid or a punk. Is she a punk at this point? Yes.
She's kind of a budding punk.
Budding punk. Okay. Yeah, she's really cute. So, why did you, or at what point did you decide to make her chub out?
Really early on.
Really?
Her character just kind of went that way. The more I knew her character, the more I knew who she was, it just seemed right to go that way. And a lot of fans thought she was going to take this miracle drug and get skinny again, and we were all going to
They were wishing or no?
Oh yeah, they were wishing. And I said, well, no, have you ever gotten heavy and then all overnight you were skinny? No. No. So I treated it like real life, and it was kind of a challenge because I took my main character and did that to her. I didn't create a fat character,
right? Exactly.
In the background
you didn't have
or
a
anything.
Pigpen equivalent, but
Yeah.
Right.
And I kind of challenged myself and my readers that this is what happened to her. Now it's up to you to if it's good or bad.
Right. So, I was gonna. I mean, the more I know of Maggie, the more she reminds me kind of Charlie Brown. It's kind of like, I don't know. Here they've just landed back in their old neighborhood, right? And they're walking through the town, and look at Hopey there in the last frame, and she gives her a little kick in the butt, and it's a very sweet moment. The book is full of these kind of things, but okay, here's an equivalent scene. You saw Ray and Maggie in bed, and now they're off. They're in their old hometown, or is this also Hopey's hometown, kind of? Yeah, Hoppers. And they're there alone. They've left their significant others. Hopey has left her wife and kid at home, and she's got a really hot wife. And Maggie's left Ray home, who seems like he might have some brain damage. I don't know. It's unclear. Anyway, but Maggie, I think, gets this idea that she's going to sort of flirt. She's going to start something up again with Hopey, which was her old flame. And I guess Hopey kind of turns her down and even makes fun of her flab right there on the right.
She does.
Isn't that what she's doing? What's she doing? Was she just being nice?
Yeah.
Oh, I read that wrong. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. But why did she turn her down?
Yeah, well, we're giving it away, the book away.
Never mind.
But,
we won't do that.
But yeah, this scene, okay, I'm giving it away. If you haven't read it. Basically, Maggie still believes that her and Hopey got this right to do whatever they want.
By going to the reunion, you mean?
No, by doing this.
What?
Hopey. meaning, yes, you're married. I'm with the guy.
Oh.
But this is still us, right? So this is so Maggie thinks like, hey, let's let's flirt and this and that, while Hopey is talking to her son on the phone.
Right,
putting him to bed, saying, listen to mother and go to bed and this and that. And Maggie thinks that she can, right here. Mm-hmm. She thinks old ways work. I kind of did this because in the old days, it would have been reversed. Hopey would have tried something like that. She would have tried to break rules and stuff like that. I switched it where Maggie does it and fails, and because Hopey is now the straight-laced, responsible person.
I see.
When it used to be the opposite.
Mm-hmm. So how do we read that those two frames that are almost identical with her belly and the hand? I totally misunderstood this, so I want to know how I'm supposed to read that.
Well, Maggie's telling Hopey that, look, see?
No, the one below that. Yeah.
I know, but have you been working out? She goes, yeah, a little bit. So she's like, oh, yeah. You've been
I see.
out.
It's a compliment.
And then that's Maggie's opening. Hey, grabs her hand.
Okay.
Hopey pulls away.
Okay.
You misread it.
I did. I'm a terrible reader. Okay, so to add insult to injury, I mean, you make Maggie fall on her face more than once, and at the end, in this total humiliation, she falls, and Hopey thinks she's really hurt, but in fact, she's only ripped her pants. And I guess the implication is that she's too big for her pants.
And if you've been reading my stuff forever, you know that Maggie has ripped her pants since
many times.
Days, and she always falls down. That's just her thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a friend that just they fell again? What's going on?
Right. Yes.
It's just...
So now I want.
It's starting to worry me.
One of the other things that I was saying is that, so this is Ray. He's back home during the reunion, and he's talking about his headaches and his blackouts, and that they're happening less often. And one of the great things is that you see these small moments where the character is like, the character has a headache or something, and it seems like a minor thing, but it often connects to this big trauma from another thing. So I wanted to go to your last book, which was called The Love Bunglers, another fantastic title and a fantastic book. In fact, I was one of the judges of the LA Times Book Prize, and this was a shoo-in. It was the winner that year. And it's really a devastating story. But here we get Maggie's background. You see her happy little family. Maggie's the one, the tallest one, and her brother Calvin is on the right. Esther, I guess, is the one in the middle, right? Yeah. And we see them. They've just changed towns, and that's their mother, right in the bottom right, yes. And also in the top left, yes. I guess. And this is the frame where we discover, wait, it's not such a happy family. Here, Hopey now, is she a little older?
Wait, Maggie, you mean?
I mean Maggie, sorry.
She's a teenager by here, about 13.
And she discovers her dad having an affair. And we learn that she's never going to tell her siblings, I guess, or is trying to hide it from them. Yeah. And the father, you can tell, it's just the most economical view of
fucking
there's
up.
So much compacted into this one frame. Yeah. What did you say?
I said It's just the economy of fucking up.
Yes, exactly. That is well put. And this is the moment where this is the big trauma in this book, or just before it. I'm not going to show you because I wasn't sure that kids would be cleared out of the room. But this is the moment when Calvin starts to get bullied, and the frame I'm not showing you is he ultimately gets raped by one of the older boys, and it is just horrifying and but so incredibly drawn. I mean, not sensationalist, but the effects you get to see later. So this is Calvin young, and this is Calvin old in the checks. He's kind of a raving lunatic. And Ray, who is the guy in white, is somebody who he's just always a nice guy. He always does the right thing. And this is the one who's either married or not married to Maggie. And he tries to intervene and get the crazy Calvin, Maggie's brother, not knowing it's her brother at this point.
Oh, no, he knows.
He does know. Okay. Anyway, for his services, he gets slammed in the head. And that's why he has headaches in the next book. Anyway, we've talked a lot about themes and characters and, the vastness of this world, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about your working methods. So this would indicate, the one on the left, would indicate that you actually know where the story is going before you've really drawn a lot. Is that right? Is that how you work? Or?
Yes, but this page is rejected. So it works and then it doesn't work.
What happened there?
The story wasn't strong enough. It was
the whole story you threw out, not the drawing.
Yeah.
What about the one on the right?
That was re-edited. I had these panels drawn, but I needed an extra panel, so I had to move the panel. So this was a rejected page that I kind of lightboarded what I wanted to keep. Yeah, but this is what my comics look like, basically, in the beginning before they're inked.
You had some great line about how you develop things, that you see the character going off in a direction, like just the way you were talking about Maggie's weight, that it just went that way.
Yeah.
With some of these events, I think you said something like, I think, no, please don't do that. And then you say, hey, wait, this is kind of interesting. I wonder where she's going, as if the characters are kind of leading you.
Right.
But do you get the story, or do you draw until something suggests itself, or do you write it and then illustrate it? How do you
it's
work?
really organic. I don't have a formula. I get a simple idea. Sometimes it's just I want I want to draw Maggie bundled up in heavy clothes. So it's a cold day. So it's winter now, and okay, and then maybe a story comes out of that. I mean, simply because I just wanted to draw her all bundled up. A lot of times that's how stories are written. They just because I like someone's haircut, or I'll have them walking through the park, and that starts it. Sometimes I'll have an idea brewing in the back of my head for like 5 years, but I'm not ready to put it down.
I see.
Love Bunglers and Browntown, the ones you were showing, came from almost 30 years of work, all leading up to this one story.
So at this point, do you know basically their full histories up to the present moment, or are there things that are going to surprise you that you will learn about their childhoods or their connections to other characters or whatever?
Right.
Do you feel that you know where you're going, into the future.
I know the characters' lives, except there are certain pockets that are missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I did Love Bunglers, I needed to jump to the present because my comics work slower than real time. So
I see.
so like this, Is This How You See Me happens in 2 nights, and it took me 2 years to draw.
Right.
So I'm behind again in their timeline.
I see.
And so sometimes I have to jump up 5 years or something. And so there's a missing piece that I can go back if I feel like it, to fill in. Yeah.
So I don't know at what point we open it up. Do you want
We
to?
can open it up now. So we have a microphone right over there and right over there. If anyone has a question, you can line up right next to those.
Yes.
Hi, nice to see you again. I got to meet you guys at SPX in 2016. My question is, I'm interested in if you could talk a little bit about some of the wrestling you grew up with in LA. It's something I'm a little bit interested in. Some of what you got to see, some of who your favorites were.
Oh, well, yeah. And for those who don't know the wrestling world, how it works, back in the day, back in the 60s, when I grew up watching wrestling, everything was local. Mm-hmm. We had our wrestlers. New York had their wrestlers. DC had their wrestlers. Minnesota had their, everyone had their stars. And then every once in a while, wrestlers would travel, to these places. Because now, WWE is just like this one big global thing. And there's nothing local about it. It's just this
Juggernaut.
It's this wrestling world, But I grew up on local stuff coming out of the Olympic Auditorium in LA on TV. The stars were, I don't know, like Freddie Blassie, Bobo Brazil, The Destroyer, The Sheik, just wrestlers from, my childhood. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that means anything to people who don't know anything about wrestling, but yeah. And wrestling was fun. Wrestling, the thing that kept me staying was wrestling was believe it or not, the sense of humor. There was I have never seen a sense of humor from comedians or anything like wrestling had. It's its own brand of humor that of the pompous guy being interviewed or just goading the fans to hate him, that kind of thing. It's just something I've always liked. I've always liked that play that they do, and it seems a lot less now because things are more glitz and glamour than they used to. But in the early days, Ric Flair is a legend, but in the 70s and 80s, he was this like rich guy who was a wrestler who, his shoe cost more than your house. And so the people just hated him for that. But it was just and he was just so cool up there being interviewed with his shades and his $5,000 suit, and
Alligator shoes.
Yeah. And I've always liked that because there was nothing outside of that like that. So
Thank you.
What exactly does Do Vases Have Eyes sound like?
it's the song
Two Faces Have I.
Two Faces Have I by Lou Christie. It's a 60s poppy song, but they punkized it.
Okay.
Yeah. So look up Lou Christie's.
Sing?
Do I? If you want to call it that. Anyway, if you've ever heard the song Two Faces Have I, Two Faces Have I, it's just this bubblegummy poppy song from the 60s. And I just always liked it because it was so corny. And I just thought it'd be a good joke that Hopey's band did the song, but she thought they were calling it Do Vases Have Eyes. And that's how that turned into that. What's it?
It's all Spotify.
It's like a
There you go.
falsetto, right? Like
Yeah, it's two faces have eyes. Yeah. Nothing like the 60s, man. What was it?
Stick with the cartooning.
Yes. Anybody else?
I've always thought one of the really remarkable things about Love and Rockets was that it's you and your brother, both a remarkable level of quality, which seems it's pretty extraordinary because I think a lot of other collaborative things, people tend to have like a favorite or something that they look forward to and maybe not so much the other one. But I always wondered, is there any sort of editorial relationship between you and your brother? Like you were showing the rejected page and something like that, but do you just each turn in your pages and that's it? Or do you
Pretty
show
much,
each other?
yeah. Now we just split the book. He lives in Las Vegas. I live in Pasadena, California. So
And there's no electronic.
we're further apart than ever. He raised a daughter. I raised a daughter. So we kind of just, went our ways, but we still share this book.
Mm-hmm.
He has 16 pages. I have 16 pages. We.
So you didn't really collaborate on the same
No, we've
page.
never collaborated. We have always just shared the book. Just because that's how we did our first self-published version.
Mm-hmm.
And people thought it was a good idea. They thought our work complemented each other. I don't know how that goes, but
I don't know how you do anything with your sibling. It's really, that's amazing.
well, the trick is you don't fight. You don't I don't step on his toes. He doesn't step on my toes. But people say our work works together, and we don't know. It's just a brother thing.
Yeah, that's what's kind of extraordinary is that it comes together as one thing. So, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Could you talk more about your process, like for each individual story, like how much is going to happen? Like for example, with the new book, it took years to put it all together in increments. Do you work out just that increment, or like the Eugene stuff? Did you know ahead of time what that was going to be, or that sort of thing? I mean, I know do you still work out the dialogue on yellow legal pads before starting to draw and that sort of thing? Or
yeah, it's different at different times. Some stories I only have an ending, and I have to get from that beginning to that ending somehow and make it work. Sometimes I don't have an ending. Sometimes I think I have an ending, and then it becomes something totally different. Like this story, Is This How You See Me? It was basically a simple story. They're going to this punk reunion. They're a little nervous because they haven't seen people in a long time, and they don't know how people are going to react to them, how different people are going to be, and they don't even know if they're going to enjoy themselves. But it was supposed to be just Maggie and Hopey, kind of like two 50-year-old women going to this punk thing, but they get sidetracked and they go to this old movie house, and the guy is offering wine to the audience, and it's like, oh, we get wine, and then they realize, like, look at us, we're two old ladies, and that was just going to be it. When it comes to Maggie and Hopey, mostly Maggie, I have never planned to make Maggie have 100-page adventures. She just writes them. Maggie just takes me and takes it further than I even thought it would. And they write themselves. And I just I'm surprised at every turn of what they're up to. And the good part about that for me is I get to have fun and be surprised like the reader. Because if I wrote a story from front to back, very tight story, and then I had to draw it, I wouldn't want to draw it again because it's done. It's finished, written. I know the outcome. I know the ending. So I like to write it in chunks, a little at a time, because I like to surprise myself. I like to go like, oh, I didn't expect this. And so I get really excited to work, and I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good. Oh, good. And then I go, okay, what's coming? What's coming? I didn't expect this. So, it's kind of like I get to be a fan too. And that keeps me entertained enough to finish it.
And for those chunks, do you do, like in the current series, the comic series, would you write all of that material before you start drawing, or do you do like a page or two at a time?
I have the basic germ, like, okay, I know in this episode I have to get past this certain hump. How I'm going to do it, I'm not sure. I don't have 100% of it down, but it's all like swimming in my head, and it's like kids getting in line to go to back to class after recess. They're all like running, and then somehow they end up in a line. That's how it is in my head. I'm like, okay, I gotta get it to this spot, but how? Okay, this is coming, and then pretty soon it's just it all makes sense. And that's why I could never be a teacher, because just now the students would be laughing at me.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for being here. So I guess I have two related questions that sort of fall off of that. First, you say that for some of these you've sort of had the germ of idea for a really long time. Are there stories that you want to tell with these characters that are sort of kicking around in there, but you either maybe haven't figured out how to do it, or it just isn't like compelling to you to do it now? So in the sense of like, how do you decide what is the next story you want to tell? And then the other question is related to that. Do you know how your characters die? Have you thought about that? And I'm not asking you to tell us,
Right.
but I mean, how far forward are you thinking, or is it all just sort of swimming in your head?
It's swimming in my head. Sometimes I have plans and then I quit them. I like some characters I imagine disappear. That's it. Not die or anything. Just leave out of these people's lives, and you never see them again. I treat it like, friends of mine, people that I know, family, friends. I write this stuff. I know the characters because when I'm writing Maggie, I know where she was born. I know how many siblings she has. All that is in the back of my head as I'm writing her.
So you don't have a chart somewhere that says, oh, this is what happened at this date, and so you don't get it wrong, or you don't have the weight gain at this point rather than that point, or I mean, do you really just keep it all in your head?
And that gets me in trouble sometimes. I forget things, but I found out through mistakes that I have a knack of making mistakes seem like literature.
Yeah.
Like the Love Bunglers was written because of a mistake.
What was that mistake?
The Calvin story that we were talking about.
What was the mistake?
Some years ago, I started to create Maggie's family. I had only shown her sister. I wanted to show her brothers. And so she goes to a family reunion back at home, and she's hanging out with her family, and I create a family of 5, 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And I'm like very pleased, like finally Maggie has family. I'm showing it and stuff. I just happened to look at a comic I did back in the early 80s, like really early on, where they said she had 6. And I went, whoa. So very quickly in this reunion story, I have Maggie's youngest brother going, they're talking about their family and what they've been up to. And then I have her brother say, oh, and then there was Calvin who ran away really early on because, I don't know, maybe he got a girl pregnant or something. And I put that in, and I thought, okay, troublemaker. This guy was troubled. Something got him ousted from the family. Well, that sat in my head for like 5 or 10 years. And then Browntown came out of that, where that's why I tell this tragic story of Calvin.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
So that's how, I draw whole graphic novels fixing tiny mistakes. Like I meant it.
Well, if you make more mistakes and we get more like Browntown, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
You did. No, thank you very much.
Oh, hi. Are you next door?
Yeah, we're switching. Okay. Hi, I'm Linda. We're gonna be later.
What's that?
You're going to meet her later.
You're gonna meet me later. I'm Linda.
Yes. Okay.
I wanted to ask, do you have or anything in the works for more of the children's Latin American folk tales that you're doing, and any more books with tune books or anything that's outside of the Love and Rockets?
Right. Not at the moment.
It was so great.
Yeah, I've been. Francois Mouly has been bugging me about doing a second book because it was actually successful. I had no idea. But she's been bugging me to do like a follow up. Like let's ride the current.
It's a beautiful book.
Thank you. Oh, good. I wasn't sure.
Lots of people.
But yeah, she's been bugging me, and I haven't said yes yet. So.
You write women's voices so well, and I was just wondering, like, who were some of like the women that inspired you, or I know like your wife was the inspiration for Hopey, but there's so many like female women, they're so convincingly realized that it seems like it feels to me like a woman wrote that, and so just wondering what were some of the influences and how you come up with a voice and make it so just authentic.
Gilbert and I have discussed that time and time again, and we don't know, but we've come up with ones like our dad died when we were very young. We saw the world through our mom's eyes after that. She never remarried or dated or whatever. And we saw the world through her and our aunt and my grandmother who was helping her and stuff. So that could have something to do with it. It's just always hardest to explain. It's just, I do it and hope it's good, One time my wife, the one she's mentioned, said that I was the most feminine straight man she's ever known. And I said, I'll buy that. And so I don't know. I just do. But I wouldn't have known this hadn't my female fans told me so. I just did. I just tried to do my best, and I got good response. Thank you.
Yeah. Can we get one more round of applause for Jaime and Sarah?